Hi, I'm David Brint, Chair of the Foundation Board, and welcome everyone to the Investing in Cure Summit 2021. I'm here with Warren Thaler, who's the chairman of our RD Fund, and you'll hear from Warren in a couple minutes. Investing in Cure Summit showcases the remarkable advances being made in the development of therapies for retinal degenerative diseases. Most treatments in the clinical and commercial pipeline you'll hear about were made possible by funding from the foundation, including the RD Fund, our venture philanthropy fund, which has more than $70 million investments for 10 companies. Overall, we now have more than 40 clinical trials for emerging treatments underway now, most of which were made possible by the many researchers and partners you'll be learning about through this summit. In addition to being highly educational, the Investing in Cure Summit is also an expression of appreciation to you, many of whom have provided such generous, sustained support for the foundation, some of you for many decades. Warren will tell us about the program and some of the featured speakers. Warren?
Thanks, David. And thanks to everyone for joining us for this unique opportunity to learn about the landscape for retinal disease research. We have about 20 sessions over 6 days, and they include many leaders and experts in retinal disease. Some highlights include the Executive Roundtable on April 17th, which includes conversations with CEOs from Iveric Bio and 2 of our portfolio companies, Sparing Vision and Athena Therapeutics. Also on April 17th, we have a session entitled The Ecosystem, which features a panel of representatives from all sectors of the ocular research and development pipeline, including Wiley Chambers from the FDA and Laura Manfrey, co-founder of Sophia Sees Hope. Other sessions include leading retinal disease researchers such as Kapil Bharte, a stem cell innovator from NEI, and Denise Delcara, a gene therapy expert from INSERM in France, and Tara-Pekka Elastalo, the executive medical director at Blueprint Genetics. Throughout the week, on-demand videos will be posted every morning for you to view prior to the live sessions. The live sessions will also be recorded, so you can come back to those you have missed. But please, do me and David a favor. We'd like you to share some of these videos with some of your friends and your kids and other people who might be interested, because there's just a wealth of information here. And we as a not-for-profit really win when we get our message out, and we feel we have a great message. As David said, thanks to many of you, so many of you who have made so much of this great research possible. David?
Thanks, Warren. And listen, please let us know if you have questions or feedback. We appreciate knowing how the program was for you. The summit's an annual event and probably will resume as a live event. At least I hope it will resume as a live event next year. So hopefully we'll be together and have a better chance to mix and mingle. And we miss all of you very much. So again, thank you for your participation and enjoy our outstanding lineup of speakers and topics. Take care.
Welcome, and thanks for joining this session of the Investing in Cure Summit hosted by the Foundation Fighting Blindness. I'm Ben Shaberman, Senior Director of Scientific Outreach at the Foundation, and we're delighted to have with us today Evan Mittman, who will share his perspective on vision loss from a retinal disease. Evan is on the Foundation's board of directors and also as a business advisor. And we're also very pleased to have in conversation with Evan, Jason Menzo, Chief Operating Officer at the Foundation. So Jason, take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Ben. And thank you so much, Evan. It's a pleasure to get to sit down and speak with you here today. I'm reminded from our conversation a few days ago how long you've been in our community and how long you've been involved with the Foundation Fighting Blindness. And I thought maybe we could start by having you share with the audience the story of when you first found out that you were diagnosed with an inherited retinal disease and what that journey that led you to the foundation was like, and really those first couple months and years being part of this community.
Great to see you too, Jace. And yeah, my life has been a very interesting one, and one that I used to consider to be put into chapters. The chapters were before I was diagnosed and after I was diagnosed. And you know, as tough as they may sound, that was my reality. So just to give you a little bit of background, when I started going out as a young kid, Halloween time, and it was in the dark and all the other kids were hiding in the trees, I was bumping into the trees. And they kept saying to me, Evan, what are you doing? Why are you bumping into the trees? I said, I can't see the trees. And that was one early sign. The other signs were when everyone used to comment about the beautiful stars in the sky, and I never saw a star. And we knew something was up at that point. But my life was relatively normal, and I got into college, and I started college. And in fact, I even drove a car. One day when I was doing some work on my computer, I noticed that the words were a little foggy, and I thought maybe that I needed stronger glasses. So I wound up going to a ophthalmologist, and that was a day I'll never forget. The ophthalmologist said, son, you don't need stronger glasses. You need to go to the hospital. You have a retinal problem. I mean, I was shocked, and I had no idea what was ahead. We're talking about in the 1970s. And coincidentally, this was the same exact time that at that time, it was called the Retinitis Pigmentosa Foundation, was started by Ben Berman and Gordon Gund. And my mom found them because we were in desperation as to what was wrong with Evan. I went to see the doctor at the Bascom Palmer Eye Institute. So I'm 19 years old. And the doctor explained to me that I have this condition called retinitis pigmentosa, and that basically I had 1 year to see, to take up Braille and get a seeing eye dog. I'm 19 years old. So you could imagine the feelings that I had. And I dropped out of school. I began to unload trucks at the local Walmart. I really didn't know what to do with myself. 6 months went by, and I finally said to myself, you know what? I'm going to go back to school. And this time I went back on reel-to-reel tapes because I could no longer read, and eventually graduated. It was quite a road, though, and something I'll never forget, along with the ideas of having doctors look at me at the time, saying basically they had no idea about my condition, nor did they have any idea what to do about it.
That's incredible, Evan. And thank you so much for sharing that story with everyone. I know that there's a lot of people in our community, unfortunately, who can relate because they had a similar initial entry and introduction to the world of inherited retinal disease. What's awesome about you and your story is that isn't where the story ends. And so, you know, after college and you began your entrepreneurial life and beginning your business world, you know, life in the business world, maybe you could share a little bit about what that was like, and, you know, the experiences you had in business and how your vision loss impacted the road that lied ahead.
Well, you know, what I said to myself, and this is something that I try to speak to everyone about, is no one is born perfect. And you've got to look at what you have, not what you don't have. And yes, I did not have perfect vision, but I definitely had a design point of view. I definitely had worked in design and in clothing before. And I decided to start my own manufacturing and design company at 22 years old. And we started in a small factory in Long Island City. And believe it or not, that was the beginning of a fantastic, fantastic journey that led me to meet and partner with Calvin Klein, Michael Kors, John Varvatos, and many, many other designers that didn't look at my eyesight as an impediment, but looked at me as a full person. And you know, the story or the lesson behind this is really about utilizing everything that you have and be able to work around what you don't have. You know, yes, I did have a serious eye problem. At the same time, I oversaw all the design in the company. As funny as that may seem, how did I do that? Well, I told my designers that they needed to blow up the spec sheets 10 times bigger in order for me to see them, at which point I could direct what I liked and what I didn't like. And the colors I remembered from my past, and I knew that navy had to be dark, the chocolate had to be dark, and we worked it that way. And the company evolved, and I had a 40-year career in the fashion industry.
That's incredible. And I love hearing the tactical details of how you navigated those years, right?
Well, not only did I navigate the years in as far as my business goes, dating was very interesting as well. So there I am, a single guy trying to hook up, get a date, go to a restaurant, and I can't read the menu. So what did I do? I asked the waiter about the specials, and I ate them, whether I like them or not. And it worked out fine. You got to do what you got to do in this world.
You probably had a lot of, nasty meals, but it worked out all right.
It worked out all right.
That's good. Hey, Evan, one of the things I wanted to get your perspective on, you've been involved with the Foundation Fighting Blindness since those early years in the 70s. And if you think back to the foundation at that time and the foundation today, not just the organization, but also the field and the science and the advancements that are happening in this field, maybe you could share with the audience sort of your thoughts on how much has changed in the 40 years since you've been involved.
You know what? I am, number one, so proud to be part of the foundation. I've really been a part of it since 1972, from when my mom introduced me. And I got to tell you, not only do I feel that the organization single-handedly has taken the world to this point because of the incredible work of Gordon and all of the people that work at the foundation, raising over $800 million and having the business acumen and the organization to put it in the hands of the brightest minds in the world has been just the most incredible ride, really, of my life. I feel it started as a small company, and now I feel that we are the center of the universe when it comes to the possibilities for not only curing blindness, but many, many other maladies that exist in the world.
Thanks, Evan. And when you think about investing in cures, so what we're doing this week, and this is a concept that originated a few years ago, where we're bringing together all the various stakeholders that are involved in this mission, whether it be the patients or the donors, the researchers, the clinicians, the payers, the regulators, the investors, all of the different parts of the ecosystem that'll be part of the solution to bring our mission to its full realization. I'm curious if you could just share your thoughts about this week in particular and what investing in cures means to you.
This week is probably one of the most exciting weeks there is, because you go through the desert for 50 years. You come to a point where you actually see the water, you see the light. And now this needs to be a team effort. That means the FDA, the patients, the donors, the researchers, the clinicians, pharma, insurance, the whole team has to come together now to make it happen. We are right on the precipice of success, and now is the time. I tell everybody, we are going to cure blindness. So guys, do not let me down. That's what I have to say.
That's pretty good, Evan. That's pretty good. I love your passion. I've loved getting to be a partner with you for the last several years, and I can't thank you enough for all that you do for the Foundation Fighting Blindness and being an advocate and a voice for our community. And I'm so proud of the successes you've had in life and in business. And it means the world to me to get to know you on a personal level and to be your friend and colleague and to learn from you. And I appreciate your time here today to talk a bit about investing in cures and your experience. Is there anything else you wanted to share with the audience before we wrap up today?
Yes, Jason. Life is very short, and the foundation is making a huge, huge difference in not only our lives, but the lives of tens of millions of people around the world. And together we can make this happen. So let's cure blindness.
Let's do it. Thank you so much, Evan.
All right.
And Ben, I'll turn it back over to you for some closing thoughts.
Sure. Evan, thanks for sharing your stories, your history, and most of all, your passion and enthusiasm. I think what you had to say not only gives people perspective on what it's like to have a retinal disease, but your hope and passion for making a difference and getting us to treatments and cures is
my pleasure, Ben.
Again,
my pleasure.
Inspirational. And thanks, Jason, for the interview. And thanks everyone for joining us for this session. And we hope you enjoy the other sessions throughout the week.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining this session of the Investing in Cures Summit hosted by the Foundation Fighting Blindness. I'm Ben Shaberman, Senior Director of Scientific Outreach at the Foundation, and I'm very pleased to have two of my colleagues, and I consider them friends, Michelle Glaze and John Corneille. They're here with us to discuss their experiences and perspectives with having the retinal disease retinitis pigmentosa. John is the Foundation's Director of Legacy Giving, and Michelle is the Foundation's Associate Director of Professional Outreach. And to get the conversation started, I'll hand it over to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Ben, and hello, everyone. As Ben mentioned, I have retinitis pigmentosa due to mutations in RP1. I was diagnosed in 2004, right around the age of 30. And at that time, I had very few, if any, signs or symptoms. However, fast forward just over 15 years, and my vision has definitely changed over the course of time. At this stage of the game, I've got pinpoints or little islands of central vision in both eyes, and my peripheral vision is somewhat still intact. But there's an area between the two where I have no vision. I still get around just fine. I don't have to use the assistance of a cane or guide dog at this point, but I definitely have challenges. I quit driving about 10 years ago. My ability to see faces is slowly fading away, and in some cases, I can't see faces at all anymore. One of my biggest complaints is that I have a really hard time following my son's sporting activities. Basketball, baseball, I'm there and present, but it's really hard to see all that's going on without the assistance of dialogue from a friend. And so that's a little challenging. John, how about you? What's your vision like at this stage of the game?
Well, much worse. Kind of pains me, Michelle, to listen to your story because I remember what that was like. And I want to give you some credit for cleverly disguising you stating your age, but you kind of said it with some things that I'm sure the very smart people watching this will be able to figure out. I'm about 15 years older than you, and I have pretty close to just light perception only remaining. I'm looking at my laptop screen and all I can see is white. I can't see anything on it. So I have a little different path than you, Michelle, in that I was diagnosed around age 5, the same time my older brother, who has RP, he's 4 years older than I, we were both diagnosed, had severe night blindness, developed cataracts, loss of peripheral vision, and eventually the visual acuity left me as well. And I learned later in life that I was probably legally blind my entire life due to lack of peripheral vision and that definition of legal blindness. So it was really a challenge getting through school and a professional career. And I did drive until I was 40. So 21 years ago was the last time that I drove. And like many people who are watching this, I'm sure can recognize I pushed the envelope much farther than I should have driving. And there was a time too that I certainly was not I was the poster child of how not to handle vision loss, excuse me, and that I hid it from people, my friends, my colleagues, work associates as long as I could, until I really just couldn't anymore. And there was kind of a pivotal point in my life where I knew something had to change, and that was in the fall of 2005, where I've said this publicly many times, I pretty much hit rock bottom. I left my law firm. I had no idea what I was going to do for work. I was the breadwinner in my family. It was causing a real strain on my personal life as well. So I ended up finding through help in the state of Illinois where I was, excuse me, going to a school for the blind on the west side of Chicago. And I was there for 5 months and learned how to use a cane. I learned JAWS. And when I went there, I didn't even know how to type. So I had to learn how to type first. So I'm now a 100% JAWS user, and it kind of re-energized me the 5 months that I lived there. And I came back and I started my own practice of law again. That's when I found the foundation, participating as a volunteer through the Chicago Vision Walk, and then eventually to my position where I am right now. So it was a difficult time, and really, truly had to find the low point before I figured out a way to turn it around. How about you, Michelle? Was there a time in your vision loss where it really kind of struck you that, wow, this is for real?
Yes, absolutely. I was very much in denial for many years, but I do remember the moment that I realized that driving was no longer going to be an option for me. It was just about, 2010, I guess. I was still in sales, and I had traveled across the Mobile Bay for work. It was a gloomy day and had been, sprinkling off and on. But on my way home, I went through the tunnel, and I would emerge onto the bridge to make my way back across the bay. And when I came out of the tunnel, it was pouring down rain, and I couldn't see a thing. Luckily, I was able to get myself over to the side of the bridge. I scraped up the side of my car, but I didn't harm myself or anyone else, thankfully. And I had to call for some help so that I could follow a set of, brake lights home. And it was then that I realized that my life was going to change drastically. Taking away the ability to drive takes away, as you well know, John, independence and freedoms, and it makes things a little bit more difficult, and you have to adapt and plan and really think outside of the box to make things work. So that was a pivotal moment for me. And shortly thereafter, I actually hired my first of many drivers so that I could continue on with my work in the sales arena. And that was about the time, too, that I found the Foundation Fighting Blindness and got involved as well with Vision Walk in 2011. But with all that's going on in the way of research right now, I am so hopeful for the future. And while I may never be able to drive again, I mean, the dream, of course, would be able to drive again and to see clearly. That would be the ideal scenario. But even if I'm not able to drive again, just to be able to stop the progression of the disease would be so impactful and just remarkable, because I have learned how to make life work with the vision that I have left. So there's so much that I'm looking forward to, and I'm curious from your perspective, John, in regards to research and clinical trials and the future. How do you feel about all that's underway and what's to come?
Well, I share your optimism, Michelle. Before I answer that, though, I say, are you one of those rare parents then when your 13-year-old son becomes 16, gets a driver's license, you're going to be happy?
Oh, well, it's bittersweet, right? I'm going to be
Right.
terrified on one hand and elated on the other.
Right.
Yeah, I tell them all the time, you learn to drive with your daddy as much as you can, so that when you are able, you can take me everywhere I want to go.
Right. Yeah, I've been there, done that, as they say. So yes, the research and the progress that has been made is just really remarkable. And particularly having been around since 2007, which seems like another lifetime, actually, there's been incredible advancements that have been made by many of the people that are participating in this summit. And I'm so grateful for it. And I know, Michelle, that you and I are just two stories in this life. And there's so many other people with RP and the other inherited retinal disease that we fund research for that have similar stories, but everyone's situation is unique in their own way. I mean, I remember too, when I was at your stage, countless times, and I've talked to so many people who have said the same thing. If only it won't get any worse. I can live with this. I can deal with this. I don't care if I ever drive again. I know how to use JAWS. I don't care if I can ever pick up a book or a newspaper and read it again. So I hope that really, and there's still optimism that you don't get to my point, Michelle. But I think really, I think we do speak for so many others in that we don't really need perfection. We don't need to be able to fly an airplane or even drive again for most of us. We're content with stopping the progress for most of us or restoring some vision. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, even if I could just see my son's face clearly once again, that would be amazing. I mean, but if not, I mean, I can deal with what I've got going on now. And I'm so thankful to everybody out there who is pushing research and driving the research and, just thinking outside of the box and continuing to create. Please don't give up on us, don't give up on that, and keep pushing forward to drive the mission to find treatments and cures.
I agree, Michelle. And I guess in closing, my thoughts are, and this is one of the difficulties, I can't work with an outline, so kind of shooting from the hip here, but I know that the people watching this are varied in their numbers and where they are. Many of you are supporters of the foundation, affected yourselves, or have a loved one, a family member, a friend who has one of these diseases. So you probably can relate to a lot of what Michelle and I have just talked about. And we hope that we've represented your stories and feelings well enough that you agree with us. And I guess the message to the rest of the group that I would have, and I think I speak for you too, Michelle, the researchers, the clinicians, the scientists, the investors, those who are thinking about investing in this, is you represent our hope. You are all we have for, like Michelle said, seeing our grandkids' faces again, the faces of our loved ones. And if not for us, the next generations, so that future generations do not have to deal with this. And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for everything that you've done, and keep up the great work. And we'll do everything we can to help with funding to get us over the finish line.
Thank you.
That's all we have, Ben, unless you have other questions for us.
No, thank you both, John and Michelle, for sharing rather personal and intimate details of your journey with vision loss. I admire your courage very much. I don't have vision loss from a retinal disease, so I learn about it and know about it from your stories, and I'm just amazed at the courage you bring really to every day to navigate through this world, which is very much a sighted world. It's a challenge that you both take on very well. And as a colleague, I want to also recognize the passion you bring to the foundation's mission. You're great people on the foundation's team, and we're lucky to have you. And so are the people like you who want treatments and cures. They're lucky that you're on the foundation's team.
Thank you, Ben. We appreciate that.
Thanks for sharing your story, and thanks everyone for attending this session. Welcome everyone. I'm Ben Shaberman, Senior Director of Scientific Outreach at the Foundation Fighting Blindness, and welcome to the Investing in Cures Summit. And I'm very pleased and privileged to have as our guest for this session, Denny Moyer. She's a founding member and current CEO of Insight Skills Center for Low Vision Rehabilitation in Colorado. And Denny brings a couple of interesting and compelling perspectives to the world of retinal diseases and low vision. And just to start out, I learned in doing a little research for this interview that your organization, Insight Skills, has been around for 20 years, and you've served more than 90,000 people in Colorado and the surrounding areas. That is quite impressive. So Denny, can you tell us a little more about Insight Skills?
Sure. So the Insight Skills Center and the Curtis Strong Center are low vision rehabilitation organizations. We provide comprehensive multidisciplinary services to anyone who's over the age of 6, but the majority of them, of course, are the older adult because we are working in low vision. People with any vision loss that's impacting their activities of daily living, we can provide services. It doesn't matter if they have macular degeneration, diabetic retinopathy, an IRD, juvenile onset, or even trauma or neurological diseases. We provide services to all of them. We provide functional low vision evaluations with a doctor and an occupational therapist. They both specialize in low vision. We provide orientation and mobility, adjustment to vision loss, support groups, assistive technology training. We do home evaluations for safety. We do work site evaluations. And then we also have some social services like watercolor painting classes, audio book clubs, fall prevention and education classes. And we have a pretty robust outreach program. We serve the entire state of Colorado. We have the 2 clinics that I mentioned, and then we also have 5 satellite offices around the state, and we offer an on-site program, which is a mobile program that we can take anywhere in the state to people who can't get to us, that maybe they live in a more rural area and they don't have access to one of our programs. So we go out to those areas.
Your mission and your scope sound very broad. It's impressive how much you do and how many people you serve. So congratulations.
Thank you.
As I said, you are a founding member, so you helped start the organization. What led you to get the idea to start a low vision organization? And I'm sure there were challenges in getting it off the ground.
There were a lot of challenges in getting it off the ground. And actually, I didn't start out thinking about founding an organization. It turns out it was my path. I had been working in general rehab and actually for a long time in brain injury, which I loved. But eventually, I think it was 1997, I received a brochure in the mail from Bill Mattingly and Donald Fletcher, as a matter of fact. And it was for a one-day course in Denver. And the topic was occupational therapists working with or alongside, if you will, optometrists and ophthalmologists in low vision practice, which I'd never heard of before. I talked to the organization that I was working with, and since we were mostly working with seniors anyway, they agreed to, pay for the course. And I went, and I knew that this was the field I was supposed to be working in, that between my own vision loss and my experience working in occupational therapy, I really felt like I could make a difference in this field. And then I went to the Fort Collins Lions, which I was a member of, and I asked them to fund just a startup. They gave me $5,000, and this took quite a while because it was 2001 when we opened. They gave me $5,000 and said, show us what you can do, prove that there's a need for this. And that was kind of how the centers got started. We really started in a donated space. There were two of us who were volunteering our time and working full-time jobs at the same time. But eventually I had to decide if I was going to keep seeing one patient at a time and making a difference, or make a difference in this field. And I had to decide that that was what I wanted to do, that was going to be my role. So now I'm just the CEO. I really don't get to visit too much with the patients or the clients that we see, but I try to keep my hand in as much as I can.
So you've been modest at this point. You did mention you have vision loss, but you have Stargardt disease. And obviously that helped you determine your path. I presume you've been a user of low vision resources in addition to being the person that runs the company that provides them. Can you talk about your journey with Stargardt disease and perhaps the key moments that helped set you on this path?
I can try. When I was diagnosed, well, actually, when I started losing my vision, I was 19 years old. And it actually took them 5 years before they had a diagnosis for me. So for those 5 years, I didn't know what was happening in my life. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. And I had people that supported me. The optometrist that I was going to, who initially noticed that I was having this rapid vision change, he just pushed and pushed for me to see specialists. And I hated it because they were uncomfortable. I had to get a ride downtown Chicago. That's where I was living at the time. And some of them actually left me with some scratches on my eyes, on my corneas, and it could be painful. And I kept saying, I'm not going back, I'm not going back. But he pushed me, and he even offered to give me rides. He was key in making that happen. But I will tell you that once I received the diagnosis from an ophthalmologist at the University of Illinois, nobody ever made a recommendation for me to see any kind of low vision specialist or to receive any kind of services. So to be honest, by the time I decided to go back to school, which was 10 years later, after I started losing vision, I just went to the store and got some magnifiers, to the drugstore, and taped them together. And I would use those. Fortunately, one of my professors, who was also very important to me in my growth and in my path, she told me that the school had, the college had a program for people with disabilities. And so they provided me with a person, and she would go from room to classroom to classroom with me. and take notes and then blow them up on a Xerox machine. And I would have these 2 magnifiers at night with these big pieces of, legal sized paper. And that's how I would study. And it would take me hours and hours and hours. But she pushed me. Having, I had no idea about what else there was out there. Even at that time, the school wasn't telling me that, there were services out there. So that's kind of where that led me. One day with my younger daughter starting kindergarten, I was talking to a woman from our church where our children were being tested. And I was just telling her about my concerns. And she's the one who actually brought up the idea of maybe getting into the field to work with people who had disabilities like my own or any disability, just for my own comfort level, which kind of made sense to me at the time. Although that's not actually what happens, but that was how I made the decision to go into occupational therapy. It was because of this woman from my church and the conversation that we had. But I will tell you that for those 10 years, that between starting to lose vision and going back to school, I was the master of denial, literally. I didn't know anything about what was happening, and so I ignored it. But some of these people are the ones who just kept moving me forward and giving me guidance, encouraging me. Once I was finished with school, that was when then I moved to Colorado, and it wasn't too long after I moved here that I got that first brochure from, as I said, Dr. Mattingly and Dr. Fletcher, and it changed my world. It put me on a completely different path than I ever could have imagined. I had no idea when I was losing my vision if I was going to be totally blind. I had no idea if I was going to be able to see faces of my children, or if I was going to be completely dependent on, my family. In fact, my family was content to just have me stay home and take care of me, but it's not who I am. And so I did pursue going to college, even though I was terrified, and yes, and moved forward.
Well, I commend you on your courage and your persistence to keep moving forward, and I guess not listen to your family, at least in that case. So good for you. So we're at a point now, and this is sort of what the Investing in Cure Summit is all about, where there are more and more treatments moving out of labs into clinical trials. We have a lot of commercial investment in our space. Denny, can you tell me what you might want for yourself in terms of a treatment, perhaps, or something you can do for your vision? And equally important, what you want for your clients down the road?
Well, I feel like we all need hope. I feel like if we don't have some hope in the future, then we all kind of sit back and just wonder what this is all about. As I said, when I was diagnosed, and we hear it over and over and over, that when somebody receives a diagnosis, nobody's giving them any hope. Nobody's really giving them any help. They're not making referrals for anything. And all they really want is the knowledge, and they want hope. And when it comes to a cure or even a treatment that will help to stabilize or slow down the progression of their disease, I think that hope, that those things are out there for us. And of course, we're seeing it with, wet AMD. And I know there's a lot of trials out there, but when you work with an older population and they think, the only thing that's going to happen to me in my future is my vision's going to continue to get worse to the point where I can't do any of the things that I love. I can't participate in watching television or driving a car. I don't go to church anymore. I don't participate in any of the activities that I've done in the past that I loved, my hobbies, whether it's knitting or fishing or just reading. It doesn't matter what it is. They need hope that maybe we can slow this down, and maybe there is an opportunity for them as they're getting older to just learn to continue to do the things that they're doing at the level they're doing them right now. One of the biggest challenges with vision loss is it's constantly changing. And we all find, I mean, there's a lot of daily challenges with vision loss, but it changes. These are progressive diseases. And so every time we see a change, we have to adapt again. We have to adapt how we're trying to read or the tools that we use, how we're using our remaining vision. There are so many things, and as it's getting worse, it gets scarier. You know, as our world gets darker, and I know people think when somebody has 2200 vision, it's not that bad, but it is compromising the ability to perform activities of daily living, without a doubt. And it's frustrating, it's scary. People become depressed, as I found myself for those 10 years. And I want to be able to give them hope that, and I do talk to them all the time about the fact that there's research. We have recommended to people on a regular basis to receive genetic testing, because if you don't participate, then there is no hope in the future. We need people to participate in these programs. And I think that they get information when they do those things, and it probably gives them a little bit of hope, but it would really be great if in their lifetime, in my lifetime, if we could see some changes in those diseases. And for, you know, again, I work with majority of the older adult over the age of 60, but we also work with a lot of young people who have the juvenile onset types of diseases, retinal diseases, and they don't know what their future holds. And so it would be an amazing thing for us to be able to tell them, you know what, they are so close to a cure or so close to a treatment for this, you know, that they would feel like, okay, you know, they could move on. They could be anything they want to be, which is what we try to tell people. But yeah, what I want for my clients is for them to not be afraid, is for them to not feel the depression and the anxiety, and for them to be able to live the lives that they dreamed they would have when they retired. So often they retire and, you know, their plan was to travel or read all of these books that are written in German, and I've been saving it until I had the time to just sit and read all of these things. Or even like myself, you know, scuba diving, to be able to drop down in the ocean and actually be able to see the same things that other people are seeing. I can see some of the colors and some of the, you know, schools of fish and things, but there is just so much out there. And it would be really great to be able to know that, you know, you can continue to do those things.
Well, thanks, Denny, for giving us that perspective, your perspective for yourself, and equally important, the perspectives of the people that you're serving. And I agree, hope is really an important thing for one to have in their lives. And we're at a point where there are more than 40 clinical trials underway for emerging therapies. And this conference is all about the investments being made in research. And ultimately that translates into hope. So thanks for being a part of the patient perspective, both you as somebody who's affected and your clients. I think what you've had to say really underscores your resilience and persistence, but also the fact that there's still a need, a big need to overcome these conditions. So thanks again, Denny, and to everyone watching, thanks for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the Investing in Cure Summit.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and it's always wonderful to see you.